The last ripple fades above a darkness that seems solid, yet the ocean floor is only the first boundary. Below its mud lies an archive of falling shells, buried rivers, moving plates, hot rock, and circulating water. Every grain conceals a journey, carried from continents, erupted from volcanoes, or built inside a drifting organism. The mystery begins below the visible seabed, because hidden layers contain far more volume than their exposed surface reveals. If you could descend through it, softness would become stone, and familiar landscapes would yield to planetary machinery. Our 4 evidence tools are scientific drilling, seismic imaging, long-lived seafloor observatories, and laboratory analysis of recovered material. Their narrow windows illuminate immense regions, but they never turn scattered evidence into a complete underground map. We therefore follow evidence downward, separating directly recovered material from structures inferred through the travel of seismic waves. The uppermost layer may be loose sediment, slowly compacted by everything that settles through kilometers of water. Beneath young mid-ocean ridges, however, fresh volcanic rock can meet seawater before much sediment accumulates. Farther from the ridge, dust, clay, shells, and landslide debris thicken across an aging plate. Some layers record calm accumulation, while others preserve sudden violence from eruptions, earthquakes, impacts, or collapsing slopes. The floor is not a lid placed over emptiness, but a changing interface between ocean and solid earth. Its concealed story is driven by burial, heat, pressure, chemical exchange, and the relentless movement of tectonic plates. To discover what lies beneath, we must first understand how oceanic crust is born. At spreading centers, mantle rock rises, partially melts, and supplies magma that cools into new basaltic crust. Pillow-shaped lavas form where eruptions meet cold water, creating rounded masses observed across active and ancient seafloors. Below them, vertical sheets of solidified magma-mark channels that once fed repeated eruptions at the ridge. Deeper still, coarse gabbro records slower cooling within crustal magma bodies, although details vary among spreading environments. These rock relationships are directly exposed in some tectonic windows and recovered imperfectly by scientific ocean drilling. Seismic velocities support a layered crust, but velocity boundaries do not always correspond neatly to one rock type. That limitation matters because interpretation depends on temperature, cracks, fluids, alteration, and mineral composition together. Oceanic crust is usually thinner than continental crust, yet it carries the weight of entire abyssal basins. As it moves away from its birthplace, it cools, contracts, thickens thermally, and settles deeper into the mantle. Cold seawater enters fractures near ridges, descends through permeable rock, warms, reacts, and may rise through hydrothermal vents. This circulation removes heat, alters basalt, transports dissolved chemicals, and sustains ecosystems independent of surface photosynthesis. Microorganisms use chemical energy around vents, while Riftia pachyptila tubeworms rely on internal symbiotic bacteria for nutrition. Those communities occupy the exposed edge of a much larger, poorly bounded habitat within pores and fractures below. Cells have been recovered from deeply buried sediments and basalt, demonstrating that life extends beneath the visible seabed. Their activity is often extremely slow, constrained by scarce energy, limited nutrients, temperature, and available pore space. Burial isolates organic material from oxygenated water, allowing microbes to use other chemical reactions for survival. Mainstream interpretation identifies this deep biosphere as vast in area, while its total biomass remains difficult to estimate. Not every detected molecule proves active life, because contamination and ancient biological remnants can complicate a sample. Laboratory analyses compare chemistry, cell structures, and incubation responses, yet each test reveals only part of the system. Sediments also contain water trapped between grains, carrying a chemical history of burial and microbial transformation. As compaction squeezes those pores, fluids migrate, minerals dissolve, and new minerals crystallize under changing conditions. The resulting rock can preserve climate signals, biological turnover, and ocean chemistry across millions of years. Reading that record requires caution, because burrowing organisms, dissolution, pressure, and gaps can rearrange or erase evidence. Beneath continental margins, the hidden architecture becomes thicker, older, and more complicated than ordinary oceanic crust. Rivers deliver enormous sediment loads that spread across shelves, slopes, canyons, and deep submarine fans. Rapid burial can trap water and gas, raising pore pressure until sediments weaken, deform, or slide. Some organic matter is transformed by heat and time into hydrocarbons within suitable sedimentary basins. Their presence depends on source material, burial history, temperature, migration pathways, and geological traps acting together. Methane also forms biologically in shallow sediments, so its origin cannot be identified from presence alone. At cold seeps, fluids escaping through the seabed feed microbes and animals, such as Bathymodialis mussels. These outlets reveal underground plumbing. But a seep provides a local leak, rather than a complete picture of the reservoir. Layers of salt can flow slowly under pressure, bending overlying strata and reshaping roots, followed by buried fluids. Along subduction zones, sediments and hydrated crust descend beneath another plate, carrying water and carbon downward. Increasing pressure drives fluids from minerals and pores, influencing earthquakes, melting, and chemical transfer into the mantle. Some material is scraped into an accretionary wedge, while other material continues beneath the overriding plate. You would not see this boundary as a clean crack, because fault zones contain crushed rock, fluids, and branching surfaces. Earthquake waves outline the descending slab, yet their images remain interpretations constrained by station coverage and resolution. Direct drilling reaches only a tiny fraction of these dangerous, deeply buried fault systems. Recovered cores can show deformation and mineral reactions, but drilling may disturb the very pressures being investigated. Far below the sediments and crust lies mantle rock, dominated by minerals stable under immense pressure. The mantle is solid on short timescales, although it deforms and circulates slowly over geological time. Partial melting occurs where rising rock loses pressure, where temperature increases, or where added water changes melting conditions. Thus, an underground ocean of liquid magma is not waiting beneath the ordinary seafloor. Magma instead occupies limited bodies and networks, evolving as crystals form and surrounding rock responds. Magnetic patterns in oceanic crust preserve reversals of Earth's field beside spreading ridges. Their symmetry helped establish seafloor, spreading, transforming scattered observations into a coherent theory of plate motion. Older oceanic crust ultimately approaches trenches, fractures under bending, and may disappear into a subduction zone because recycling destroys most ancient seafloor. The ocean basins preserve a younger record than many continents. Rare fragments thrust onto land offer additional evidence, though their original settings can be debated. No recovered section yet captures the complete journey from newly formed crust to material entering a trench. Burrowing worms ventilate mud, microbes transform nitrogen, and bottom currents expose or bury organic particles. When oxygen becomes scarce, chemical pathways shift, changing which organisms survive and which compounds return to the ocean. Volcanic and hydrothermal processes supply iron, sulfur, manganese, and heat. Then currents disperse their chemical signatures. Most vent minerals precipitate near their sources, while some dissolved or particle-bound material travels much farther. On continental margins, unstable sediments can fail, producing submarine landslides and tsunamis under particular conditions. Seismic imaging of buried layers helps assess these hazards, but recurrence intervals and failure triggers often remain uncertain. Human cables, pipelines, and offshore structures cross terrain, shaped by faults, channels, erosion, and moving sediment. Understanding the subsurface, therefore, connects planetary history with practical decisions made at the ocean's surface. Drilling also reveals how past climates changed as ice sheets grew, currents shifted, and biological production varied. One narrow core can contain a long sequence, yet missing intervals may represent erosion or non-deposition. You must imagine that record as a damaged film, reconstructed from overlapping fragments rather than uninterrupted footage. The search for energy and minerals raises further stakes, including disturbance, leakage, and damage to little-known ecosystems. Any claim about resources must distinguish geological potential from recoverable deposits and from environmentally acceptable extraction. Carbon dioxide stored beneath the seabed is investigated in porous formations sealed by less permeable rock. Monitoring must test whether injected carbon remains contained, migrates through faults, or changes surrounding fluids. Natural subsurface reservoirs offer useful analogs, but engineered sites require their own observation and long-term evaluation. Even deep-sea conservation depends on understanding connections between surface habitats and processes hidden below them. The floor supplies hard surfaces, chemical gradients, and disturbance patterns that organize communities across multiple scales. What lies beneath is therefore not separate from the ocean, but one of the systems continually making it. These connections make each buried boundary relevant to ocean chemistry, hazards, climate history, and biological survival. Denser seismic networks can sharpen structures by comparing how waves travel through different materials and temperatures. Long-lived seafloor observatories can track pressure, heat, chemistry, and small earthquakes through changing seasons and tectonic cycles. Deeper drilling may recover intact transitions among sediment, basalt, dikes, gabbro, and upper mantle. Each added meter will test whether textbook layering survives the variability found in real oceanic crust. Clean sampling can better separate resident microorganisms from contaminants introduced by drilling fluids and handling. Experiments under realistic pressure and temperature can measure how slowly deep organisms process their limited energy. You may picture an enormous hidden biosphere, but its boundaries must be established, sample by sample. Borehole observatories could reveal which fractures connect, how long circulation lasts, and where reactions occur. Fault zone observatories may clarify how pressure builds before earthquakes, though reliable prediction remains beyond present evidence. Comparing active ridges, quiet abyssal plates, continental margins, and trenches will expose both common processes and exceptions. The greatest unknown is not a single buried object, but how rock, water, carbon, and life interact through time. No instrument can yet follow every pathway from settling particle to subducted mineral and returning volcanic gas. Still, converging observations reveal a seafloor underlain by archives, habitats, waterways, engines, and recycling boundaries. The opening darkness was never empty. It marked the surface of a restless, partially known planetary interior. Beneath the ocean floor lies no proven hidden world, only a real and unfinished Earth revealed through cautious evidence.